Yes, my t-shirt does have Satan on it. Baphomet, Beelzebub, Lucifer. You gotta love it, really, I think. Hi honeys, at the beginning of Self-Love September I posted a question on my Facebook page where I asked you guys to let me know what you would like to know about self-love and what kind of subjects you would like me to tackle during the month of September, and I received some really interesting questions. But I want to kick things off by answering a question which was actually posted as a comment underneath one of my videos, and I thought this question was really interesting, and it was a question by somebody who wanted to know what can be done to help young children who appear to already be struggling with self-loathing and don't seem to have really felt a true feeling of self-love. They're struggling as children, and what would be the best way to help them. I would always say that with children it's best to lead by example. You will often find that many children that exhibit early forms of self-loathing or hang-ups about their body, hang-ups about the way that they are and stuff, worries about being authentic, that kind of thing, they're sponges of the adults around them. They're sponges of the energies and the vibes and the attitudes and atmospheres that exist amongst their primary caregivers. So the more people, the more adults that can be in a child's life who are genuinely on their own journey of self-love and can actually reflect that energy in the child's direction, that's a good thing. The more adults that a child has around that are like that and are genuinely considering themselves to be their own friend, the child picks up on that kind of thing and they kind of learn by your example. So I would say lead by example. I would also say that there are so many different things that you can do to tune a child into the importance of self-love and make sure that a child is actually consciously thinking about the love that they can have for themselves and the value and respect that they can have for themselves. I know that a lot of people have told me over the years that either their parents gave them a little pep talk about self-love or self-acceptance that they may have had to deal with children that made them question their own sense of authenticity or validity as a person, and their parents kind of gave them nice guiding words. Somebody said on my Facebook page the other day that they went to like a little self-love workshop when they were a kid, which is so cute. It was kind of like Sunday school but for self-love. And I know somebody else who has a YouTube channel who homeschools her daughter, and she says that she puts self-love into the curriculum. You can put self-love into your child's curriculum, or you can put self-love into the teachings and the wisdom and the guidance and the support that you provide for a child in your life, a child that's important to you. This isn't something that you need to wait for a school teacher to kind of have a bright idea about. It's something that you can create a curriculum for in a child's life, and you know, I always think it's such an important thing to do. So yeah, lead by example, and don't forget that there's a lot of wisdom that you can impart to them, and you can do so in a way that will be understandable to them but very helpful to them when they're facing challenges. Somebody on my Facebook page asked me, how do you stay in self-love and how do you remove blockages quickly? And she also asked me if I feel as though you need to renew self-love. I do in a sense think that you need to regularly renew self-love, but only in the sense that I feel it's a daily practice. As I said at the beginning of Self-Love September in my tips video, the first video that I made, I think, I did mention that I don't think self-love is this place that you arrive at like a location and suddenly everything is fine and suddenly you never need to do any work again. There will always be challenges that arise that make you that cause you to have to reassess your sense of self-love, recalibrate it, and kind of bring it up by its bootstraps. There will be times where you kind of forget to approach your decisions and solve your problems in a self-loving way, and that's the time at which to check in with yourself and remind yourself of your purest and deepest intentions. As for removing blocks quickly, I think that once you have an awareness of your key blocks, then it's easier to remove them quickly and with less fuss. So for example, if you are aware that there are certain aspects of negative self-talk that always come into play, and maybe they are to do with a certain family member who rubs you up the wrong way, or maybe they are to do with the way you feel around certain group dynamics, maybe in your place of work, maybe they are to do with relationship issues, with patterns that you kind of keep going into. Maybe it's some part of negative self-talk that just comes along at a certain point related to a certain thing. Once you get really clear on where your triggers are, and where they tend to be hiding, then you can become conscious of them. And it's only once you become conscious of them that those blocks can be lifted and alleviated quickly, because you are in league with yourself, you are your own ally, and that's the really important thing. Once you become conscious of where your specific problems are, and this is really about being curious about yourself and exploring your sense of self so much more, when you become clearer on your specific issues, then it's easier to remove the blocks quickly, because you actually see them coming into effect and you see where your problems are. I think staying in self-love has really got to be, in the main, a question of setting your energetic vibration and your highest intention each day. So I would recommend, when you get up out of bed in the morning, before you do anything, before you go to eat or have a shower, just sit with yourself for a couple of minutes and set your energetic vibration. Decide the speed at which you want to vibrate, the feelings that you're going after, the way that you are going to approach whatever is coming forth in the day, and decide upon certain key feelings that you are going to align yourself with and you are going to gravitate towards. Shield yourself if necessary, protect yourself, go through the chakras if you want to, so that you can set your auric field and ensure that it is less fucked with by outside negativity, etc. I also think that using a mantra each morning can be very powerful, or going through your prayer beads. I was talking to a client yesterday, and I'm quite sure she won't mind me saying, that we were kind of discussing for a while the fact that things like prayer and meditation and ritual are actually all a grand form of preparation. They are beautiful and true in and of themselves, but they're also a form of preparation for anything unexpected or chaotic. Many people who have a daily practice of meditation or a daily practice of checking in or prayer or anything of that nature will find that when something really unexpected happens, when something shocking or unpleasant or unpredictable happens in their lives and things take a very quick turn, they are much more able to ground and centre and stabilise and get onto the next right action. They do it actually much more quickly and much more softly and gently than people who don't have that daily spiritual practice or don't have that practice of checking in and talking with themselves. So I think it's always a form of preparation. So not only is it really good for maintaining your grasp on what you want to achieve with self-love and reminding yourself of your high intention to love yourself, but it also just prepares you for those key times where triggers might come into effect that really challenge your ability to love yourself, and really you almost feel this temptation to do something that is fundamentally not self-loving. And it's at that point that your incredible daily preparation, your daily practice of spiritual focus will give you that much more strength and that much more perseverance to move forward in a self-loving way. Somebody asked me, how do I identify the difference between healthy self-love and unhealthy self-indulgence or self-involvement? This particular person said that she was raised in a spiritual household, Christian household, in which the concept of self-love was vilified. And this is something that I actually hear quite a lot from people that I speak to on this subject, that they were raised in a household where self-love was considered to be other to love for God. And so it's very difficult for her in the here and now, obviously, to see the distinct difference between a healthy form of self-love and this more kind of self-indulgent, self-involved state of being that was so vilified for her in her childhood, in her family structure. I would always say that if you are cultivating a practice of daily self-love, you will actually find that the more you cultivate it and the more you foster it, the more involved you are with the rest of the world, and the more likely you are to be of active service, and the more likely you are to understand when somebody is upset or hurt and actually go towards them and do something about it. And you know why that is? It's because you've got more in the tank and therefore you have more to give. This is the rationality, and it really is as simple as that. Those who run on empty and consistently give and give and give of themselves without actually focusing on how to fill up their tank and how to nurture themselves, those people are going to burn out, and those people are going to end up feeling resentful, and those people may be liable to have some kind of breakdown, because a car can't run on empty and neither can your soul. So the more you actually cultivate a practice of self-love, the more you'll find that you are actually able and you are actually willing and you are actually completely desirous to go out into the world and help people and show up for people and actually spread that love a little more. Those people who cultivate self-love are actually those people who really, really embody the Christ flame. They embody it so much more. They can be healers, they can be sages, they can be people that give of themselves, they can be people that volunteer or involve themselves in charities or bake a cake for their community meeting or whatever, because they can do that. They've got it in the tank to do that, therefore they can give that, and it doesn't stress them out to give that. So, you know, part of self-love is knowing when you need to take time for yourself and when you need to actually remove yourself from a dynamic so that you can focus on yourself. Of course, healing does require that sense of distance, that sense of stepping back. But the other thing that's so important about self-love is that when you actually begin to cultivate it and it starts to heal you and it starts to fill you up and you start to see how to connect the dots of it and how to cultivate it in your daily life, you actually just start showing up for people and for causes, and you become the Christ flame, you embody the Christ flame. You start to think more like that particular ascended master. And behave in the same way as them. So, you know, if it really is about being Christ-like, then I would say self-love is integral to the plot of being Christ-like, because I see so many people with a genuine practice of daily self-love holding the Christ flame, embodying the Christ flame, and living by those beautiful messages that were so inherent within that particular ascended master. So yeah, I think, you know, if you want to be more Christ-like, then be more self-loving, because the two go hand in hand. How to focus on your truest potential. This is a really juicy question that I got from somebody. First of all, I've said this before in my self-sabotage workshop that I did earlier this year. I think that there is quite a lot of language around topics like soul's purpose and heart's desire, you know, one true calling, that kind of language. And I think although a lot of people enjoy that kind of language and get a massive kick out of it and they feel that it really resonates with them, a lot of other people are intimidated by it, and a lot of other people feel that it doesn't really reflect what they feel about their lives. It's quite scary for some people to try and figure out what their soul's purpose is or what their heart's desire is, because they feel like they're cutting off other parts of themselves, which, although they may not be integral to the plot of purpose, are still very important, and still they want to give time and focus to those things. I think when people go in for this language and it doesn't resonate with them, they often feel that they are trying to chisel themselves down into just one key focus area or one key area of potential, and it doesn't feel right for them. So I would say go with the moment, ditch anything to do with soul's purpose or heart's desire or one true calling if it doesn't resonate with you. If it makes you feel scared and panicked and like, oh my God, I need to find my purpose, or I don't know what I'm doing with my life, forget it. You know, if that language doesn't tick your particular box and it feels like it's pushing you down a pressured road, I would say ditch it. Instead, I would say pay very close attention to when your body feels at its most vibrant, at its most full, at its most healthy, and at its most alive. Pay attention to those times where you really feel that there is flow and engagement. When psychologists use the word flow, what they really mean is when you're so damn invested in an activity that you lose all sense of time and you almost lose all sense of ego. You are one with that practice. You know, like how you see women weaving baskets and stuff like that, or weaving rugs, and they're so involved, they're totally engaged. The act and the ego have become one, and there is no such thing as time, and it's just a beautiful moment of flow. I would suggest that when you have those times where you are in flow, it almost kind of borders on ego death to an extent. It's so much you and the task becoming one, and you're like an organism and you're working with each other. Flow is what you're looking for. That's where your purest and truest potential is, because really it should be easy. It shouldn't be so hard. There's a lot of myths surrounding creativity. There's a lot of myths surrounding success. We tell ourselves that like mental illness and great suffering and pain and depression and low moods are all the price that you have to pay to reach your creative potential. And frankly, at the age of 29, after many years of believing that that was the case, I call bullshit. That's not the case at all. I'm happier and more content than I've ever been, and I'm also more prolific than I've ever been as a writer and as a creator of content of any kind. So it really is bullshit that your truest and purest and highest potential can only be reached through suffering. Actually, flow, engagement, simplicity, that beautiful, delicate interconnectedness, that's what you're looking for. If you get that with any activity in your life, then that might be where some of your purest potential actually lies, because it's such an intense feeling of flow that it doesn't even feel like like work, you know. And of course there's ups and downs to the creative process, but I would say find the flow, find the engagement, and that's where the truest potential lies for you. He asked me about reclaiming lost parts of yourself after abuse or torture. I may go into this in more depth in another video, but for now I just wanted to say that it might be very helpful for anybody who also has this question to look into shamanic soul retrieval and different techniques for doing that with yourself. A long time ago I blogged about a potential tarot spread that I'd kind of designed for a shamanic soul retrieval in terms of looking into those themes. I'll try and find it and link it below for you. There are many different ways in different shamanic cultures of kind of reattaching parts of the self which have fragmented away. But I also think that the other thing that it could be very helpful to look into, if you feel that you are ready for that kind of commitment and ready for that kind of exploration, is shadow work. Because quite a lot of the parts of yourself that break away during trauma or abuse end up in the shadow, and that's why they can be so difficult to connect with. You know, and you'll often find also that fragmented parts of the self are just, they're hidden away in a part of the psyche that the trauma can't get to. I remember one shaman once in an interview saying that a fragmented part of the soul is actually a part of the soul that has broken off in order to hide away from the trauma so that it's not affected by the trauma. And actually all it's doing is it's hiding somewhere, and it's up to you to kind of seek it out and make that connection and say, you know what, if the trauma's over now and you don't need to hide anymore. And for as long as your psychic and ethereal body is eaten up by some sense of the residue of fear from the trauma or abuse, the shedded part of the psyche, the fragment of the psyche, will still hide because it still feels that sense of threat. So it's really important for you to go through a process of healing so that you actually dump that fear out of the psychic body, and then you may find that the fragmented part of the soul actually comes back and attaches itself on its own. But sometimes it does require some hide and seek kind of situation to find it, but quite often it's hiding because it still feels that sense of threat in the psychic body. So it's really about implementing the healing process in whatever way you can. And if you tried other ways in the past, like traditional counselling or whatever, and they didn't work, or if you tried talking to one person and it wasn't effective, so you find that you shut off, I would really invite you to open up as many other avenues towards healing as you possibly can, because the journey is not over yet. There are ways and means for you to heal. Maybe you need to make art, maybe you need to go on a vision quest, you know, maybe you need to, whatever you need to do, find closure over that argument that is still kind of, you've still got yourself wrapped up in. You know, you kind of know that there are ways and means of tapping into healing that you may not yet have explored, and it's time to get serious about exploring them and kind of accepting that there are ways and means for you to heal, and there are tools that you can try. You haven't tried them yet, and it's now time to kind of give yourself that opportunity to try some. He asked me for some practical methods of building up trust in yourself. And somebody else also said that they struggle to trust themselves. They struggle to trust their intuition. They sometimes kind of have the answer in their mind, but they struggle to actually follow through with it because they don't know whether or not they can trust their own insights. I would say, first of all, if you actually struggle to trust your intellectual comprehension of intuition, so for example, you know in your mind that your intuitive voice is saying something to you over and over again, but you don't feel that you can trust it, I would say get into the body. The body is a really underrated tool with intuitive insight, and with that feeling of just knowing what is right and going after it. So if you actually tune in with your body's responses, for example, while you're trying to make a decision or solve a problem, and you're sat there and you're weighing up the pros and cons, and your rational mind is arguing with your intuitive mind, and you know you're going through that internal struggle, I would say switch from the mind to the body. Check in with how you're breathing. The rate of your breathing. Does your chest feel tight? Is there any tension in your neck? Do you have goosebumps when you think about a certain course of action? Do you get fidgety when you think about a certain course of action? When you sit down and visualize the 2 courses of action or more that you could take, how do you feel in your body? How's your temperature doing? Do you feel tense? Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel expanded? Do you feel restricted? Let the body be the focal point for trust. Okay, because the body is very often it's that tool that is so underrated and so not tapped into, but actually it will tell you the truth, no bullshit. And when you hear it from your body, then your mind won't argue. Your mind has to kind of fall into place and agree with what the body is telling you. Help you to do some third eye activation meditations. I really found that this was very useful for me in my past when I was struggling to actually trust feelings that I was having and trust responses that I was having. I would also recommend doing throat chakra activations and potentially throat chakra healing. You can find kind of exercises, guided visualizations, all that kind of thing for each of the chakras all over YouTube and all over the internet. There are so many good ones, and I recommend that you give them a try. The third eye chakra can be activated in order to get a stronger sense of your intuitive insights. The throat chakra can be activated in order to enable you to be assertive, to stand your ground, to do what needs to be done. I'd also recommend potentially solar plexus chakra activation. So the solar plexus deals predominantly with your sense of identity, with your sense of free will, with your sense of who you are as a person. And activating the solar plexus chakra can help you to be really authentic and in the moment, and it helps you to stop bullshitting yourself and actually to be your own ally and know when you know that something is the right course of action, if that makes sense. So, you know, I really think that chakra activations and working through the chakras can be so helpful for a sense of being grounded, being centered, and setting your energetic vibration. But I think those three can be particularly helpful if you are struggling to trust yourself and you want to kind of develop more self-trust. So I think that's something that I would say to finish off, and I really hope that the answers to these questions have been helpful. So much love, guys. Blessed be.